Welcome to part 2 of lesson 1.3. If you recall from part 1, we were using a special formula, which was the midpoint formula, and we were finding the x and y value of the midpoint of a line segment. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the distance formula. The distance formula helps us find the length of a line segment. So anytime a question is asking you to find the length of a line segment, it's important that you know the distance formula to get that length. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. If you haven't gotten yourself a pencil yet, go ahead and do that and write in your learning target. I'm going to go ahead and write in the distance formula in the box here. And the distance formula states if A and B are points in a coordinate plane, then the distance from A to B is, and that's going to be the square root of the difference of the x values plus the difference of the y values. So in other words, you're going to subtract the two x values and square them, and you're going to take the difference between the y values, that's subtract the y values and square those, then add them together, and then take the square root. So there's a lot of order of operation here. Remember, the order of operations are important. If you don't do them properly, then of course you're going to come up with the incorrect length of the line segment. So it's important that we, go slow, use your calculator, do all the things you know to do to get the right answer. Some students have trouble because negatives become part of the calculation, and that sometimes messes up the final answer. So be careful, take your time. I would like you to know that the distance formula actually originates from the Pythagorean theorem, and we're going to go into that in just a moment. You don't have to know too much about the Pythagorean theorem, but I want to relate the distance formula to the Pythagorean theorem. So let's go ahead and look at example number 1. In example number 1, it says use the distance formula. So if we have point B and we have point A graphed here on our coordinate plane, then we should be able to find the length of the segment, or the distance between the 2 points. So let's create a right triangle using this diagram here. And so I've kind of highlighted the two sides of the right triangle, and then of course our segment that we need to find the length of is going to be the hypotenuse. So this is a right triangle, and we know that the Pythagorean theorem works for any right triangle. So what if I said that this side over here was called side A, and this side was called side B, and this side was called side C? Well, we remember then that the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And what the distance formula does is helps us find c. And if we look a little bit closer, this a here in the distance formula is represented by x2 minus x1. That's just the distance from here to here. And the b on my diagram is really represented in the distance formula by taking the two y values and subtracting. That's this length right here. So they are related. It might be hard to see by what I've said and what I've described here, but really we're just finding the hypotenuse, the length of the hypotenuse of this right triangle. So let's go ahead and try it out. We're going to always draw our square root in. It's got to be kind of long. I'm going to take my two x values and put them inside those parentheses and square them. I'm also going to take my two y values and put those inside the parentheses and square the difference of them. So here's an x value, here's an x value. I would like to take the larger number and subtract the smaller number just to keep all of my numbers positive if possible. And then I have this y value, which is larger, and this y value, which is smaller. So just to avoid any problems with negatives, I always try to take the big number, subtract the small number. Okay, it really doesn't matter which one is x2 or x1, that kind of thing. So again, you're going to put your stuff inside of the square root symbol in the second step. So 6 minus 3 is just 3. I still need to remember to square that. and then I have 7 minus 2, which is 5. I have to square that. Now I've taken care of the parentheses, so now I'm going to do the exponents. Remember, order of operations have to be followed here. Okay, so this next step is going to be 3 squared is 9. Remember, it's 3 times 3, plus 5 times 5, which is 25. And now I have the square root of 34. Now, once you take the square root of 34, I would like you to give me the answer with 1 decimal place. And the answer is 5.8. Once you take the square root of the number underneath the square root symbol and you have your answer, you do not need the square root symbol after that point. So just leave the square root symbol off once you've taken the square root. Now, the 2 problems below here, we have some on your own practice problems for you. I'd like you to show your work. Remember that each time you begin, you want to start off with that square root symbol. Okay, this is kind of the framework of starting a distance formula problem, isn't it? So you can probably fill in everything you need now that I've got that set up for you. Same thing with problem number 2. You're going to start with the square root symbol, fill in your difference of x values, and then also fill in your difference of y values, and make sure that you do the order of operations correctly. Now, just for number 2, looks like you're going to have a negative symbol here. Okay, so the negative symbol is going to be an interesting thing. This is a y value, this is a y value, so when you come over here, you have a 3 minus a negative 2. All right, be careful with that. Those 2 negatives together are going to end up being a positive sign, and so you're just going to have 3 plus 2 inside those parentheses. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the back of our note sheet. On the back, we have 4 more problems where I would like you to show your work and use the distance formula to calculate the length. Okay, this is another hint. Anytime a problem asks you to find the length, you want to immediately think about the distance formula. That's the only way to find the length of a segment, is to use the distance formula. So you're going to set up your problems, and I'd like you to round your answer to the nearest tenth. That's just 1 decimal place. And of course, as you take the square root, leave that square root symbol off, okay? The one that I would like to do with you is number 6, and the reason is because it has a couple of negative signs there. Let's go ahead and take a look at that one. When I set up my problem, I'm going to make this really long square root symbol. I'm going to have my x values inside of there, my y values inside of there, and I do see that I have a negative x and a negative y. So let's get started here. We have 9 and negative 3. Those are my 2 x values. When I have a double negative like that, it's going to turn into a positive. And then I have my y values, so 5 and a negative 1. So don't forget, we're still going to subtract even though there's a negative sign. So my next step is going to show my combination of the negative sign. So inside here I'm going to have 9 plus 3 squared and 5 plus 1 squared. Okay, it's a good idea to actually show each and every step so that you don't miss something, or if you do end up having to ask for help, I can see where you might have made an error. All right, 9 plus 3 is 12. If you show each step, I can always say, hey, look, there's where I see an error. And 6 squared is also going to be under the square root. So my next step is to go ahead and square both of those numbers. I get 144 and I get 36. All right, add those together and I get 180. So I need to take the square root of 180. And that ends up being 13.4. And just as a reminder again, once you take the square root, please leave that symbol off. The answer simply is 13.4, not the square root of 13.4. This is the root, so leave the symbol off of your answer. For the remaining problems on the page, I would like you to work by yourself. Make sure you use your calculator, show each and every step, and then there will be an answer bank written on the whiteboard so that you know if you did your work correctly. And of course, if you have any questions, please make sure you ask if something is unclear. Thanks for watching.